Imagine coming back from a month-long business trip, completely exhausted, just dreaming of your own bed, only to find a strange minivan in your driveway and a bouncy castle on your front lawn. Now imagine putting your key in the front door, realizing the locks have been changed, and having your own sister open the door to tell you that she lives there now because you don't have kids, so you don't really need a whole house. Yeah, that actually happened to me. But what my sister didn't realize, while she was standing on my porch in her pajamas, holding a mug that said "World's Best Mom," was that I am not the kind of person who rolls over just to keep the peace. I didn't argue with her. I didn't cry. I just walked back to my car, pulled my property deed out of the glove box, and came back with 2 police officers. If you have ever been the responsible, child-free sibling in your family, hey, and you are so sick and tired of people acting like your time, your money, and your belongings are up for grabs, you are going to want to hear this. Let's back up a bit and talk about something I like to call the child-free tax. I am 32. I am single. And I do not have children by choice. I have a career that I absolutely love, and I worked incredibly hard to buy myself a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet, safe neighborhood. It is my sanctuary. My older sister, Megan, is the exact opposite. Megan has 3 kids under the age of 8, a husband who refuses to hold down a full-time job, and a massive entitlement complex. Megan firmly believes that because she chose to reproduce, the entire universe owes her a massive favor. Whenever we had family dinners, she would make these passive-aggressive comments about my house. She would look around my clean, quiet living room and say things like, "It's honestly just greedy for one person to take up so much space." Or she'd say, "Must be nice to have a guest room that just sits empty while my kids have to share a bunk bed." I usually just brushed it off. I figured she was just stressed out and bitter about her own life choices. I didn't want to start World War III over the mashed potatoes. I thought she was just complaining. I had absolutely no idea she was actively treating my life's work like a free real estate catalog. And until I made the biggest mistake of my life, I went out of town. My job required me to go to Europe for 4 weeks to help open a new branch of our company. It was a massive opportunity for me. Before I left, I gave a spare key to my parents. Now, here is a little tangent and a crucial piece of advice. If your parents have a history of having absolutely no backbone when it comes to your siblings, do not give them a key to your house, ever. And I asked my mom to just come by once a week, water my indoor plants, and make sure the mail didn't pile up. That was it. The trip was exhausting. By the end of the 4 weeks, all I wanted to do was go home, order a massive pizza, and sleep for 14 hours in my own bed. I landed on a Tuesday afternoon. I got my luggage, got in my car at the airport, and drove home. I was practically drooling thinking about my couch. But as I turned onto my street and pulled up to my property, I slammed on the brakes. My house didn't look like my house anymore. It looked like a daycare center had exploded. There were plastic tricycles on the lawn, sidewalk chalk all over the driveway, and parked right in front of my garage was a beat-up silver minivan leaking oil onto my concrete. My brain completely short-circuited. For a split second, and I actually looked at the street sign to make sure I had driven to the right house. I had. I got out of my car, dragging my suitcase behind me. My heart was pounding. I walked up the front steps, pulled out my house key, and slid it into the deadbolt. It didn't turn. I tried again. It was jammed. I looked closer at the lock. It was shiny and brand new. The locks had been changed. Panic started setting in. Had I been robbed? Did squatters take over my house while I was in Germany? I started pounding on the heavy wooden door with my fist. I heard footsteps inside. The deadbolt clicked open, and there stood my sister, Megan. She was wearing sweatpants, holding a cup of coffee, and looking at me like I was the one interrupting her day. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice completely shaking. Why are your kids' toys on my lawn? Why doesn't my key work? Megan rolled her eyes. I let out this heavy sigh and crossed her arms. Look, don't freak out, she said. Our landlord raised the rent on our apartment, and we couldn't afford it. Mom said your house was just sitting here empty for a whole month, which is completely ridiculous, by the way. So, we moved in? I stared at her. I literally could not process the words coming out of her mouth. You moved in? Into my house? Yeah, she said casually, sipping her coffee. It just makes sense. You're single. You don't have kids. You don't need a 3-bedroom house. It's selfish, honestly. You can take the small guest room for now, and we'll figure out the rest later. Oh, and my husband is watching the game, so keep your voice down. Most people would probably start screaming right then and there, or crying, or throwing punches. Honestly, part of me wanted to rip that world's best mom mug out of her hand and smash it on the porch. The sheer audacity of this woman standing in the house I paid for, telling me I was selfish for wanting to live in it, was enough to make my blood boil. But then I remembered something very important. Screaming doesn't solve problems. Legal documentation solves problems. I took a deep breath, looked at her, smiled this icy, terrifying little smile, and said, "Okay, Megan, give me just a second to grab something from my car." She looked smug. She thought she had won. Yet she thought the word family was a magic spell that forced me to accept whatever garbage she threw at me. I walked down the driveway, got into my car, and opened the glove compartment. Because I am a paranoid, highly organized person. I keep a certified copy of my property deed, my mortgage statement, and my ID in a fireproof folder in my car. I pulled it out. Then, I dialed 911. I didn't call the non-emergency line. I told the dispatcher that I had been out of the country, and I came home to find intruders who had broken into my house and changed my locks. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I sat in my car for 12 minutes. I didn't text my mom. I didn't knock on the door again. I just waited. 2 police cruisers pulled up with their lights flashing. I got out of my car and walked over to the officers. I handed them my ID and the deed to the house, and I explained the situation very calmly. I told them my sister had illegally entered my home, changed the locks without my permission, and was refusing to leave. The officers looked at my paperwork, nodded, and walked up to the front door. They knocked, hard. Megan opened the door. When she saw the cops, the smug little smile instantly vanished from her face. "Is there a problem, officers?" she asked, her voice suddenly high and nervous. "Ma'am, do you own this property?" the taller officer asked. "Well, no, but it's my sister's house, and we're family," she stammered, pointing at me standing behind them. "She's just overreacting. We're staying here." The officer looked at her completely deadpan. "Ma'am, this woman is the sole legal owner of this property. She has stated that you do not have a lease, you do not pay rent, and you changed the locks without her consent. That is breaking and entering. Joanne trespassing." Megan's husband finally waddled out of my living room, looking confused. "Hey, what's going on? We live here now." "No, sir, you do not," the officer said. "You have exactly 30 minutes to pack whatever you can carry into your vehicle and vacate the premises. If you are still on this property in 31 minutes, you will both be arrested for trespassing." Guys, when I tell you the absolute meltdown that followed was the most satisfying moment of my entire life, I am not exaggerating. Megan started full-on sobbing. She tried the guilt trip. "But we have kids. Where are we supposed to go? She doesn't even have kids. She doesn't need this house." The cop just stared at her. "Ma'am, the law does not care how many kids you have. Get packing." It was glorious chaos. For the next half hour, I stood on my front lawn with my arms crossed, Watching my sister and her husband frantically throw trash bags full of their clothes and toys into their leaking minivan. The kids were crying, and honestly, I felt bad for them. They didn't ask for terrible parents. But I was not about to let my home be stolen. While they were packing, my phone started blowing up. It was my mother. I answered it. Before she could even say a word, I spoke. "You gave her the key." My mom started crying on the phone. She had nowhere to go. "You have so much space. You're being so incredibly selfish. How can you throw your own family out onto the street?" I kept my voice perfectly calm. "If you care so much about them having a place to live, Mom, they can move in with you, but you are never setting foot in my house again." And I hung up. Exactly 28 minutes later, Megan's minivan pulled out of my driveway. The cops waited until they were gone, handed me my paperwork back, and told me to get a locksmith immediately. I did. I paid emergency fees to have every single lock on the house replaced within the hour. I spent the next day installing heavy-duty security cameras on every corner of the property. When I finally walked inside and looked around, the house was a mess. They had left sticky handprints on my walls, crumbs on my expensive rug, and they had completely taken over my guest room. It took me a full weekend to deep clean my own house. It has been about 8 months since the eviction. I haven't spoken to Megan, her husband, or my parents since that day. My extended family tried to send me nasty messages on Facebook, calling me a monster for making my nieces and nephews homeless. I just replied with a group message that said, "Since you're all so concerned, I assume you'll be offering up your spare bedrooms to them. Let me know how that works out for you." Shockingly, none of them volunteered. Look, as society conditions us to believe that the word family is an unbreakable bond that requires unconditional sacrifice. And for some reason, if you choose to be child-free, people automatically assume your life is just a waiting room, and your resources belong to those who decided to reproduce. But here is the reality. Your hard work, your peace, and your sanctuary belong to you. You do not owe anyone your home just because they made poor financial choices and happen to share your DNA. If someone tries to use the We're Family card as a free pass to steal your peace, don't argue with them. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking you are the selfish one. Just hand them back to reality and let the consequences do the talking. Have you ever had a family member try to claim your property or your money just because they thought you didn't need it? How did you shut them down? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story gave you the closure you needed today, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more satisfying revenge stories. And remember, always change your locks. Catch you in the next one.